For more on all of this, let's go to Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett. He joins us now. Major, good morning. I think it's important to point out that the only reason we are talking about this today, that we know about it at all, is because Donald Trump himself issued a statement on it. With that as context, how significant is this FBI search of the former president's home?
It doesn't get any more significant than this. Not only is former President Trump someone who looms large in America's political conversation, he is actively talking about seeking the presidency again. So this would be something the Justice Department would have to review at the highest levels, as was said in Catherine's piece, and a grand jury and a judge would have to say there is probable cause to execute a search warrant because that search warrant is in pursuit of a possible crime having been committed. All of that is true. But what we don't have is very much transparency from the Justice Department or the FBI. We have one statement from the former president using very florid language. My home is under siege, raided, occupied. Essentially, a search warrant was executed because the judicial authorities, with all the relevant facts, believe there's probable cause that a crime was committed. But in the larger political context, this is a dangerous and unstable moment in American history. This is now a conversation about weaponizing the justice system at the federal level. And Trump supporters hear that, and they may react in a very combustible way.
Well, that's where I was going to go with this follow-up question here, Major. Christopher Wray, the FBI director, who presumably had to sign off on a raid of this significance, is a Trump appointee after the former president famously fired the last FBI director. And also, the FBI is supposed to be a nonpartisan agency of law enforcement. It's doing its work on 10-year terms at the director level. So talk a bit more about the implications of the former president using those explosive words to describe this important arm of the government.
Well, it's not only the president's words. So many other Republicans, almost instantaneously, as if former President Trump was a ringmaster directing them rhetorically into this battle, describe this as a prime example of judicial corruption. They describe the Biden administration as a regime. They basically said that the FBI should be defunded. Some Republicans did, rushing to the defense of former President Trump, assuming that this has to be a nefarious and illegitimate and corrupt exercise of law enforcement prerogatives, when it may be quite the opposite. We don't know what the underlying facts are. We haven't seen the affidavit. We haven't seen the search warrant. And as I understand it, because of this sensitivity, there would be a conversation between former President Trump's lawyers on the scene about what was taken and why, and a receipt given to the former president describing what federal authorities took and under what legal authorities. The president, the former president, is in possession of that and could help explain to the public what happened. He could release that if he wanted to. So could the Justice Department. So could the FBI. What we lack here is real insight into the underlying justification for this search warrant, what it sought, and what the applicable laws that possibly were violated were. Until we know more about that, this feels deeply politicized, and the president is reveling in the atmosphere of victimhood, as he has many times before.
You know, Major, I hear the critics of the president saying, listen, there better be a real there, or this could further divide the country. His supporters say, look, once again, it's a witch hunt against the president. You know, even using the word unprecedented, depending on your point of view. Unprecedented because this has never happened before, witch hunt for President Trump. Unprecedented if you're against the president because you think, well, surely they have something. How do you square those two?
So, we hear this said all the time, Gayle. The rule of law in our country matters, and no one is above the law. Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, has said that repeatedly. He said it very emphatically to our colleague Jeff Begays, who asked him that question, specifically referencing former President Trump about possible prosecution. So the country has this moment where it has to evaluate underlying evidence and what the evidence is and what the possible crimes are. And without that, you have a very political atmosphere, one in which the former president currently has the upper hand.
All right, Major Garrett, so much to unpack here. Thank you so much.